Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about, I said on Facebook and stuff and Instagram that I'm working on a true crime video. I should have corrected that. It's not a true crime, however, it does involve death and suicide, so please be warned if those are triggering topics for you, maybe not watch this video. But I wanted to tell a story about basically the story behind a very popular song. I came prepared with police report. I've been doing a lot of research on this particular case because I wanted to make sure I got everything right. So basically, everything that I have here, I got off of a website that I'm going to put below. I'll put all my source information below. But this one, the end of the link says the Jeremy story. It's a really good website someone put together, and basically they, that's where I also got the police report from. They had a copy of it and they wrote a very detailed timeline of the police report. And so if you want more detail than what I'm going to give, I recommend checking that website out because it was pretty great. But I haven't really found any videos on this topic, and it's hard to find any information on this topic. So I thought it would be interesting to do a video so that if anyone like me went searching for it, they could find this and all the information would be there. I will also be linking below any some websites and phone numbers you can call if you are having thoughts of suicide, dealing with severe depression and not knowing where to turn. Please reach out. Don't let it fester inside of you, because there are people, many people who care and who want to help, and no matter how alone you may feel, you're not. So that is my warning and my PSA for the day. Let's get into this. So I will not be playing the song that this is based off of for copyright purposes. However, if you want to do a quick search of the Pearl Jam song Jeremy, you can find the music video and the lyrics and everything online. I'm going to put the lyrics below as well too, so you can read through them. But basically, the lead singer of Pearl Jam, Eddie Vedder, was reading a newspaper one morning and he found the story about a young boy who, and I have that article right here as well, this young boy who killed himself in front of his class in high school. But he decided to write a song about it. Now, contrary to popular belief, his song is not solely about Jeremy, because the song does deal with bullying and saying that I bullied this kid, basically. It's a mix. It's a mix of Jeremy and a kid that actually went to school with Eddie Vedder, but that kid, he didn't kill himself. So he kind of mixed the two stories together. So if you're confused by this story and how some of the lyrics don't match up, that's why. It's technically about two people, but it was named Jeremy because the kid that this story is about, his name was Jeremy Wade Delle, and he lived in Richardson, Texas, and went to Richardson High School. And this happened on January 8th, 1991, when Jeremy was 15 years old. And he went into his second period English class and took a revolver and shot himself in the mouth, in the throat. So I thought I would kind of go over the backstory of it, and not necessarily what led up to it, because the thing is, there's a lot of people confused about it. It seems like Jeremy suffered from some very severe mental illness that maybe in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, we did not understand and did not really fully have the tools to help him, because he did go through a lot of therapy and a lot of help. He even went to therapy, I believe, the morning of the shooting. So I just wanted to quickly, I'm going to keep this as concise as I can, but I know this is going to be a long video because there is a lot of detail involved. It may sound like I'm giving sort of useless information in the beginning, especially about he dated this girl, he broke up with that girl, whatever, but these are girls that gave a lot of information in the police reports, and these are girls that he spoke with that day or the day before, basically. So they are important to the story, and his relationships with them, I think, is important. So like I said, Jeremy was from Texas. When he was 5 years old, his parents split. I think they divorced about a year and a half later, and they both remarried. I believe the mother remarried once and the father remarried twice. I may have that backwards. But so he kind of grew up in a home with a lot of divorce and probably a lot of arguing and whatnot. He lived with his father, I believe, most of his life. I think there was a time where he lived with his mother for a little while, but his mother, I believe, called the father and said, "You're going to have to take over again," because they just didn't know how to handle everything that Jeremy was really going through. So in 1990, this is the year before the shooting, in March, Jeremy met a girl named Nancy. They met at a retreat sponsored by this church in March of 1990. In April, they broke up, so they were together for about a month. Nancy broke up with him, and Jeremy was then hospitalized for trying to commit suicide by taking an unknown quantity of pills. And he was admitted to an inpatient adolescent program at a place called Timberlawn Psychiatric Hospital, and this is in Dallas, Texas. So while he was at Timberlawn, he met a girl named Michelle. Jeremy would get passes to come home from Timberlawn. I guess he would take breaks, and he would drive to see Nancy. And he drove to see Nancy one day, and he threatened to shoot himself, this is what he told her, because of family and school problems. And that happened in July. In October, Michelle had previously been released. It's not written in the report when she was released from Timberlawn, but in October, she gets readmitted to Timberlawn, and Jeremy actually gets released. So it sounds like he was there from April to October. When he was released and Michelle was readmitted, they broke up. I don't know why they broke up. I don't know if the hospital had anything to do with that, but they broke up. In October 1990, Jeremy met a guy named Ryan, who is also tells a lot in the police report about Jeremy. But Ryan was a friend of Jeremy's, and he was actually in the room when Jeremy killed himself. So they met in October, and according to Ryan, Jeremy told him that he wanted to get a gun. And Ryan said, "Well, my dad has a gun." And Jeremy replied, "I'll give you $200 if you let me use it to kill myself." And Ryan thought he was joking. And, you know, they're high school boys in the early 90s. I mean, this was kind of not that crazy of humor, I guess. And Ryan told him that he said, you know, you're stupid, whatever, and again thought it was a joke. And Jeremy responded with, "Well, I'll give you $1,000 if you'll kill me." Jeremy indicated that for unknown reasons, people were tracking him down to kill him. And Ryan told the police that Jeremy was often on high on pot and taking acid a lot. So Ryan wasn't sure, I guess, if that was him just being high and saying stupid stuff or what, but he assumed he was just joking. In November, a student named Ashley reported to the school counselor that Jeremy had told her that he wanted to kill himself. So it was reported to a school counselor. So it wasn't really lack of people helping him, because like I said, he was in a psychiatric hospital for a long time. He is seeing a therapist since his release. He's going to a therapist, but there's something wrong with him, and it could be that he's using things like acid. I don't know if he was medicated after being in the hospital, or you know what, if the acid could be messing with that. I know that his toxicology reports were clean when he died, so he wouldn't have been on anything. I don't know why he seemed to be unable to be helped. So then we move into December 11th. This is less than a month before the shooting. Jeremy allegedly told a fellow student named Antoine, "I don't need any more help from this school. I'm going to murder blank and then kill myself." And the blank was his 5th grade math teacher. Jeremy also allegedly stole $47 from a cash box in the gym after a basketball game. On the 12th, Antoine went and told the assistant principal about the threat against the math teacher. And the assistant teacher notified the police and of the alleged threat, as well as a book that they found in Jeremy's locker that was called Cults That Kill. And they also found a deer's leg found in his locker. I believe it was wrapped up like in a trash bag or something, but I mean, obviously it's one thing to find just a book like that and I guess err on the cautious side, or from an older generation really be freaked out by it. But I think a deer's leg being found in the locker along with it and a verbal threat is enough warrant to be like, we need to check on this. So he notified the police. They found the money, I guess, because Jeremy was arrested for theft, and the police questioned Jeremy about threatening the math teacher. He said that he made a general comment about the teacher ending up dead, and that the comment was twisted as it was passed from student to student, and that he doesn't have a reason to hurt a school official. I'm reading this from the police report. Police recommended counseling. Joseph, which is Jeremy's father, tells the police that Jeremy has had a lot of psychological treatment, and that Jeremy was in Timberlawn in early 1990. That was the psychiatric hospital where he met Michelle, and that he is checking into other options for Jeremy. So his father took this seriously and said, okay, we're going to find him another therapist. I don't believe this is written in the end in my notes, but it is written in the police report that the day Jeremy died, one of the things that was found in his wallet, like on his person, was the therapist. It said therapist and the person's name and last initial and their phone number. So he had a therapist that he was seeing during this. And 2 days later, the assistant principal told the police that Jeremy is already back in school, but he is confined to ISS, which is in-school suspension. The assistant principal said that Jeremy will be patted down occasionally, and he also said that he's working to get Jeremy committed to a treatment program, and that school officials have been advised and have taken appropriate precautions. Late in December, about a week after Christmas, it says, or the week after Christmas, Jeremy told Michelle, that original girl that he met in Timberlawn, that he was given a gun. And then we moved into 1991. January 3rd, Jeremy allegedly told a classmate that he would kill the math teacher the next day. Of course, nothing happens. January 6th at about 11 a.m., Michelle called Jeremy, and she said he seemed depressed and that he was on acid, and she tells him that she might be pregnant. During the conversation, Jeremy tells Michelle he would die for her. Afterwards, Michelle calls Wanda, which is Jeremy's mother, and said that Jeremy sounded strange on the phone, but she said that Wanda didn't show any concern. She felt that Wanda couldn't care less, basically, is what she told the police. January 8th of 91, before leaving school that morning, Jeremy called Nancy. It was about 7:30 in the morning, and she said that Jeremy told her that him and his father would be up and moving to Tokyo that day, and that their flight was at 3 o'clock, and he wanted to know that if he came back, would Nancy be there? And she assured him she would be. He told her that he had gotten a ring from his dad's girlfriend's house and would be putting it in a letter for Nancy. He also wanted to make sure that Nancy would be okay if he was gone. She again assured him she would be. And she said she thought this was weird that they would just up and leave, but then she thought he sounded really hopeful. Maybe this is going to be a good fresh start for him. So she wasn't, scared or anything. She thought it was going to be a good thing. Later, come to find out, none of this was true. There was no plan to move at all. At about 8:20, Jeremy had arrived on campus. He paged his father to let him know that he had made it to school because I believe he had therapy that morning. But instead of going to in-school suspension like he was supposed to, he ended up at the Eagle's Nest, which was the commons area at the high school. He saw a girl named Andy sitting with her friend Jennifer. He walked up and he asked Andy for a favor. He asked if she could mail an envelope for him, mail a letter for him that afternoon. And he said he wasn't going to be around after school. And she said, yeah, that's no problem. And then he reached in his jacket and pulled out the ring that he told Nancy about. And he said, I wanted to put this in here in front of you so that you know how important it is that this gets mailed. And he left it unsealed. And she said, of course I'll do it. And she told the police he didn't look disturbed at all. He looked completely normal. And she had every intention on reading the letter because it was unsealed. But before she got a chance to pull it out and read it, after he left the room, the bell rang and she went to class, and then she forgot that she even, she was focused on school. At 9:40 a.m., Jeremy came to class late. And again, this is his regular class, not ISS. He lost his slip to admit him back to class after ISS. And he said he would get another one from the office. He got a hall pass from the teacher, who was Mrs. Barnett, and he walks back out of the room, takes off his coat, and puts it on his desk. He leaves the room, goes to his locker, and removes something, presumably the gun. While walking back to the room, a classmate calls his name, but Jeremy doesn't turn around. He enters the room, puts his hall pass on Mrs. Barnett's desk, and says something similar to, "Miss, this is what I went for." He then pulls out a gun, puts it in his mouth, and shoots. His suicide occurred in room B201 with a .357 Smith & Wesson Model 19.4 in front of a classroom full of 30 students. And they said it happened so fast, nobody could react to it. He walked in, said, "Miss, this is what I was looking for," and stuck the gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger before anybody could react, before anyone could say anything. Because they didn't know when he's saying, "Miss, this is what I was looking for," what it was, until he put the gun in his mouth and shot. So he killed himself in front of his entire class. They were all rushed out into the auditorium to await police and a crisis team, which there are articles from the newsletter about some crisis teams that had already started forming because there had been, I think it was like 6 prior shootings in the past 3 years or something of adolescents killing themselves. And I don't think it was in this Texas area. I think it was just sort of big things in general. But so this, I guess it was the school had put together a crisis team for anyone who needed help and stuff. So they got the crisis team in there sort of as a peer-to-peer help to talk to the students about what they had just witnessed and try and help them through it. And thank God they did. But that, I can't imagine seeing that and then just being like, okay, let's go on with our lives. And apparently, I think those students were allowed to leave for the day, but from what I read, I don't know how accurate this is, but from what I read, school continued for like the rest of the day, and there was no like day off the next day or anything like that. Like they all just kind of sucked it up and kept on moving, which is kind of traumatizing to think about it. But I don't think they really knew that much about PTSD either. At 4:30 that afternoon, they went to Timberlawn to interview Michelle, who told them she was pregnant, but not by Jeremy. She told the police that they had actually never had sex, and that was one of their main problems, was that he really wanted to and they didn't. But he never said that he was going to commit suicide. He would, however, make side remarks about suicide, according to Michelle. He said a week before that he would die for her, and she had called Jeremy's mother and all that. So the note that Jeremy gave to his friend Andy that morning with the ring in it was actually a suicide note. And again, she didn't read it. She didn't have time to read it. She had every intention to, but then the bell rang and she stuck it in her bag and forgot about it. And it read, "Sorry, Nancy, by the time you get this letter, I will have blown my head off, aka suicide, better known as the last way out. Newsflash, not your fault. It's Michelle's, along with about 137.5 other problems. I was just writing to see if you wanted to go to the funeral. Call my house and ask for my dad," and he gives his dad's phone number. "At least you didn't have to hear the boom. Love, Jeremy Wade Delle." Apparently there were a couple of other suicide notes mailed out to one friend in West Texas. I believe I read somewhere that he actually sent one to Michelle saying that she was not to blame. And apparently an audio cassette which detailed his suicide plan. I don't know anything about this cassette. I don't know where it is, if it really existed, or who has it. But yeah, that is the story of Jeremy Delle. Very, very sad, very tragic story. Something that sadly could have been prevented, but nobody exactly knows how. It seems like everyone was doing everything that they could. So Jeremy's dad, apparently, I guess years later, wrote a letter talking about how hard it was on them and how the song really made them famous and not in any kind of good way, and that they constantly get letters and phone calls, and he had to sell his house and move away, and just the impact that it had on their lives, the song had on their lives. Again, I'm going to leave links below from where I got the information from. I hope you guys like this video. I'm very into true crime, suicide, any kind of crazy stories like this. So if you guys like this, let me know, and I will gladly do some more. But yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Bye.